Distractions are all around us, but in the cockpit we have to know how to deal with them. If we don't, we risk making really bad decisions. It's time for another Decision Making Debrief, real life, real time flying examples. Hello there. Being distracted while conducting flight safety critical tasks can cause a whole heap of trouble. The purpose of these videos is to share my own examples of decision making when flying, and when it comes to distractions, I've had many experiences over the years. The case I want to share with you today is a clear example of how a simple distraction in flight can result in some poor decision making and poor prioritization of tasks. So I was flying with my husband and my son up to Scotland from the south of England. James doesn't fly with me too much and is a little nervous in the cockpit, but he's got quite a few flights under his belt now. Everything was going really well actually, and we'd just been given a clearance to transit Doncaster controlled airspace.
India Victor, thanks, identified traffic service, and he cleared to cross IFR, maintaining 4,000 feet northbound.
Now, for reasons not exactly clear to me, it became apparent that James's headset had stopped working.
Can't hear me.
And because it wasn't working, he was speaking loudly into the microphone, and this in itself was unpleasant and a distraction.
Can you hear me now? I can't hear me either.
I did all the usual things of checking the headset connections, seeing if we could adjust the volume on the ear cup, looking at the intercom settings and so on.
Can you hear me now? I can't hear you and I can't hear me. Okay.
The cause of the problem didn't immediately come to light, and so I wrote a little note on my kneeboard telling James not to worry. But before long, dealing with what was essentially a very small problem began to consume me. And while troubleshooting it, I climbed, and I was now 200 feet higher than my cleared level. When I noticed this, I pitched forward quite abruptly to get back to my cleared level, which startled James.
Oh, yeah, you're very, very quiet and I can't hear me at all. Right, can you hear me now? Yes. Happy now? I can hear you now, yes.
Now, I called up the controller on the radio and apologised for my deviation from the cleared level. There were no dramas, thankfully. The cause of the problem? Well, it turned out that one of us had knocked the intercom volume for James's headset, something we discovered a few moments later. But I had made some poor decisions here. Firstly, I rarely use the autopilot in my aeroplane because it's almost as old as me, and like me, it isn't particularly reliable. It will hold a heading though, just. And perhaps putting on the autopilot would have been a good first response to this problem. That might have helped, but it probably wouldn't have prevented the altitude bust because it doesn't have altitude hold. So what else could I have done? I could have used a checklist to see if there were any hints on there as to what was causing the problem. I could have just muted James on the intercom and written another note to him telling him that I'd sort the problem out later, perhaps when I'd left controlled airspace. Another thing I could have done is use the mnemonic TDOR. I don't know if you've heard of this. They use it quite a lot in commercial flight operations. T is for time, how long have we got? D stands for diagnose the problem. O is for options. What are our options? D is for decide, where we look at those options and decide which we're going to act upon. A is for actions, what is going to be done and who's going to do it. And finally, R stands for review. We should constantly review those actions we've taken. What are the implications of those decisions? What if? And how much time do we have now? And so on. Had I used TDOR, it might have slowed me down and helped me give the problem its due priority. I think this is something we can perhaps all learn from situations that arise in the cockpit. There is often a real sense that we've got to urgently solve the problem, and that can distract us from other things. Sitting on your hands is often a very good thing to do, as long as your wings aren't falling off and your engine's on fire and so on. Finally, I think there's perhaps something to be added to my passenger briefing in future. What the passenger should do if we lose the ability to talk to each other. It happens quite a lot. If James and I had talked that through before flight, he would hopefully have been less agitated by the surprise of not being able to hear me. We all would have known what the plan should be. Ultimately though, I need to be able to recognise when I'm being distracted and prevent myself from being consumed by that distraction. Easier said than done, I think. It's concerning to me now, here on the ground, some months later, quite how distracted I became by a very, very minor problem. And it all happened so quickly. All calm in the cruise, 1 minute, then all of a sudden, mayhem. I'm actually quite upset that I didn't recognise that I was experiencing kind of tunnel vision, and I was troubleshooting this minor headset issue to the detriment of the safety of the flight as a whole. The old adage, aviate, navigate, communicate, also comes to mind, but amazing how quickly that seemingly is forgotten when we're startled. I hope now, having debriefed this, I'll be less inclined to make the same mistake again, and perhaps hopefully you too in future will have the presence of mind in a similar situation to stay calm and prioritise the flight. The next free safety workshop from Astral Aviation Consulting is on the subject of learning to fly. It's a kind of student drop-in clinic. It'll be on Wednesday the 29th of May at 7:30 in the evening, British summertime. To join us, register for free at astralaviationconsulting.com. And if you like this debrief, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll be back next month with the next in the series.